The mining drill bit through the frozen ground with a sharp whining sound. Dr. Kira. Veltan wiped the sweat from her blue-scaled forehead and stepped back from the excavation site. 3 months of digging on this dead world had given them nothing but broken concrete and rusted metal. She was starting to think this mission was a waste of time. "Doctor, we found something," called out Excavator Zen from the bottom of the pit. His voice carried a note of excitement that made Kira's heart beat faster. She climbed down the metal ladder, her boots clanging against each rung. The pit was 20 feet deep now, cutting through what used to be the foundation of a human building. The humans had been gone for over 150 years, but their ruins still dotted this planet like broken teeth dotted the bottom. Zen pointed his scanner at a section of wall that looked different from the rest. Instead of concrete, this part was made of smooth metal that reflected their work lights. Strange symbols were carved into its surface. "What is it?" Kira asked, running her gloved hand over the metal. "Some kind of door, I think." The scanner shows a large empty space behind it. Could be a bunker or storage room. Kira felt her excitement growing. Finding intact human structures was rare. Most of their buildings had been destroyed when the plague hit Earth and spread to the colonies. The survivors had tried to burn everything to stop the disease from spreading. They had failed. She activated her communicator. "Commander Morkai, we need your team down here. We found something big." 20 minutes later, Commander Thane Morkai stood at the edge of the pit, looking down at them with his 4 golden eyes. The Zephyrian was tall and thin, with skin that looked like polished silver. He had been fighting the Vex Empire for 12 years, and the war was written in the scars across his face. "Is it worth my time, Doctor?" he asked in his cold voice. "Unknown, sir, but it could be a weapons cache or technology store. Anything we find might help with the war effort." The commander nodded slowly. The coalition was losing the war against the Vex. They needed every advantage they could get, even if it came from the ruins of a dead species. It took 2 hours to cut through the door. When it finally opened, cold air rushed out like the breath of a ghost. Kira shined her light into the darkness beyond and gasped. The room was huge, easily 50 feet across and 30 feet high. Rows of white metal pods lined the walls, each one the size of a human coffin. Most of the pods were dark and silent, but a few still glowed with soft blue light. "Cryogenic storage," Kira whispered. "They froze people here." Commander Morkai dropped into the pit and walked past her into the room. His boots echoed in the silence. "How many?" 43 pods total, Zen reported, scanning the room. 39 are offline, 4 are still running, but 3 show biological failure. Only 1 pod maintains a stable life sign. Kira moved to the active pod and wiped frost from its viewing window. Inside, she could see a human male, pale and still. He looked young, maybe 30 years old. His hair was brown and his face was peaceful in sleep. "What does his uniform tell us?" the commander asked. Kira looked at the name patch on the sleeping man's chest. "Collins Jake, Sergeant, United Earth Defense Corps." She paused. "Commander, look at this." She pointed to a plaque on the wall next to the pod. The human writing was faded but still readable. "Emergency military personnel. Colonial Defense Unit 7. Authorized for revival only in case of planetary threat level Alpha or higher." Commander Morkai was quiet for a long moment. Then he laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "They put their soldiers to sleep and waited for someone else to wake them up when the real fighting started. How typical of humans." "Sir, should we revive him?" Kira asked. "For what purpose?" "Humans have been extinct for generations. Their military knowledge is primitive compared to modern warfare. What could one sleeping soldier tell us that we don't already know?" Kira stared at the frozen human. Something about his face made her curious. Even in sleep, he looked ready for action. His hands were positioned like he was reaching for weapons that weren't there, Permission to speak freely, sir. The commander nodded. We're losing this war. The Vex have pushed us back from 6 systems in the last month alone. Our best strategists can't predict their movements. Maybe we need to think differently. You want to wake up a primitive soldier because we need new ideas? I want to wake him up because we have nothing left to lose. Commander Morkai studied the sleeping human for a long time. The war was going badly. His people were dying every day, and the Coalition Council was starting to talk about retreat to the inner systems. Maybe the doctor was right. Maybe they had nothing left to lose. Do it, he said finally. But I want a full security team present. We don't know how humans react to revival after so many years. The revival process took 6 hours. Kira worked with the Coalition's best medical team to slowly bring the human back to life. His body temperature rose degree by degree. His heart started beating again. His brain showed increasing activity. When Jake Collins opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was Kira's blue face looking down at him. He tried to sit up fast, but restraints held him to the revival table. Easy, Kira said in English. You're safe. My name is Dr. Kira Veltan. You've been in cryogenic sleep for a long time. Collins looked around the medical bay with sharp, alert eyes. He took in the alien faces, the strange equipment, the unfamiliar uniforms. When he spoke, his voice was calm but dangerous. How long? 218 years. Collins was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Where am I? The planet you knew as New Phoenix. We found your facility during an archaeological survey. New Phoenix. Collins closed his eyes. The colony was being evacuated when they put us under. Plague outbreak on Earth. Command said they would wake us when the crisis was over. He opened his eyes again. I'm guessing that didn't happen. Commander Morkai stepped forward. Sergeant Collins, I am Commander Thane Morkai of the Galactic Coalition Defense Force. Earth fell to the plague you mentioned. Humanity spread to other worlds, but eventually died out completely. You are, as far as we know, the last human alive. Collins absorbed this news without showing emotion. And you woke me up. Why? We hoped you might have information that could help us. We are currently at war with a species called the Vex Empire. The conflict has been ongoing for 32 years. You're losing. It wasn't a question. Commander Morkai felt his anger rise at the human's presumption, but something in Collins's eyes made him answer honestly. Double quotes, yes. We are losing. Collins nodded slowly. I'll need to see your tactical reports, enemy analysis, and recent battle footage. I'll also need access to your intelligence networks and strategic planning databases. You think you can help us? Kira asked. Collins sat up as much as the restraints allowed. His eyes were hard now, the look of a professional soldier sizing up a problem. Doctor, I've been asleep for over 2 centuries. My species is extinct, my world is dead, and I'm surrounded by aliens fighting a war I don't understand. But I'm still breathing, which means someone thinks I might be useful. He looked directly at Commander Morkai. So yes, I think I can help you. The question is whether you're ready for the kind of help a human soldier provides. The room fell silent. There was something in the human's voice that made everyone uncomfortable, a promise of violence that went beyond anything they were used to. Commander Morkai made a decision that would change the course of the war. Show him everything. Jake Collins sat in the Coalition briefing room, surrounded by holographic displays showing star maps, battle reports, and casualty lists. For 3 days he had been studying everything the Coalition could show him about the Vex Empire and their war. The alien officers expected him to be overwhelmed by the advanced technology and the scale of galactic warfare. Instead, he grew more frustrated with each passing hour. Dr. Kira Veltan watched him from across the room. The human had barely slept since his revival, spending most of his time staring at tactical displays and asking questions that made the Coalition strategists uncomfortable. His questions weren't about weapons or ship specifications. They were about things like supply routes, communication delays, and civilian evacuation procedures. The Vex fleet uses a formation called the Spiral of Death, explained General Korvax, a four-armed reptilian from the Drachner system. It's highly effective against our standard battle lines. We've lost 6 major engagements to this tactic. Collins studied the battle footage showing Coalition ships arranged in neat formations, firing at approaching Vex vessels that moved in complex spiraling patterns. The Vex ships were ugly things, looking more like living creatures than machines. They moved in ways that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. "Your ships fight like they're in a parade," Collins said finally. The room fell silent. General Korvax's scales changed color, a sign of anger among his people. "Excuse me, human. You line up in perfect formations, announce your presence with long-range scans, and then shoot at each other until one side retreats or dies. It's like watching a medieval tournament." Commander Morkai leaned forward. "These are proven tactics, Collins. The Coalition has used these formations for centuries, against enemies who follow the same rules you do." Collins stood up and walked to the holographic display. "The Vex don't care about your rules. Look at their movement patterns. They're not trying to beat you in a fair fight. They're trying to eat you." He pointed to several points in the battle footage where Vex ships had ignored Coalition vessels that were clearly defeated, instead focusing on ships that were trying to escape. "They hunt like pack animals. They don't want to destroy your fleet. They want to consume it. Every ship they capture gives them more resources, more biological material, more weapons. You're not fighting a war. You're being harvested." Dr. Veltan felt a chill run down her spine. She had reviewed the same battle footage dozens of times, but she had never seen it from this perspective. "What would you do differently?" she asked. Collins smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. "I'd stop fighting fair." Over the next several hours, Collins laid out his analysis of the war. He showed them how the Vex exploited the Coalition's adherence to galactic warfare conventions. The Coalition always announced their attacks, giving the enemy time to prepare. They avoided targeting civilian areas, even when those areas were being used as military bases. They followed rules of engagement that the Vex ignored completely. "You're playing chess while they're playing poker," Collins explained to a room full of increasingly uncomfortable officers. "In chess, both sides can see all the pieces. In poker, you lie, you bluff, and you take risks based on incomplete information." "We are honorable beings," protested Admiral Zaranel, her crystalline features flashing with indignation. "We do not engage in deception or target non-combatants. And that's why you're losing." Collins pulled up a tactical map showing recent Vex advances. "They know exactly how you'll respond to any situation because you always do the honorable thing. They've been using your honor against you for 30 years. He highlighted several Coalition defeats where the Vex had used civilian populations as shields, knowing the Coalition would not fire on innocent beings. In each case, the Coalition had been forced to retreat while the Vex converted entire populations into biological resources. "Your honor is killing millions of people," Collins said quietly. The room erupted in angry voices. Several officers accused Collins of suggesting war crimes. Others defended the Coalition's moral standards. Through it all, Collins remained calm, watching their reactions with the detached interest of a scientist studying insects. Commander Morkai finally restored order. "Enough, Collins. You're suggesting we abandon everything we stand for." "I'm suggesting you win the war instead of losing it honorably." Collins activated another display, showing Vex expansion patterns over the past decade. "At your current rate of retreat, they'll reach the core worlds in 18 months. Your honor won't matter much when every living being in the galaxy has been turned into Vex biomass." Dr. Veltan studied the projection. The mathematics were undeniable. The coalition was running out of time and space. What specifically do you propose? Collins looked around the room at the assembled officers. These beings had evolved past the need for the kind of warfare he understood. They had built a civilization based on cooperation and mutual respect. The idea of returning to primitive, brutal tactics horrified them. I propose we use their own nature against them. The Vex are parasites. They think like parasites. They expect you to act like prey animals, running in predictable patterns. But what if you acted like predators instead? He began outlining a series of tactical changes that made everyone in the room uncomfortable. Instead of large fleet engagements, he suggested small fast strikes against Vex supply lines. Instead of announcing attacks, he proposed stealth operations using electronic warfare to mask coalition movements. Instead of avoiding civilian areas, he recommended targeting Vex breeding facilities, regardless of what populations they had enslaved. "You're talking about guerrilla warfare," General Korvac said with disgust. "Hit-and-run tactics, ambushes, terrorism." "I'm talking about winning." Collins faced the general directly. "On Earth, we had a saying. The only unfair fight is the one you lose. The Vex understand this. They've been fighting an unfair fight for 30 years, and they've been winning because of it." Admiral Zaranel's crystalline form pulsed with angry light. "These tactics you describe would make us no better than the Vex themselves." "No," Collins replied. "It would make you alive." The debate continued for hours. Coalition officers argued about military ethics, the nature of civilization, and the cost of victory. Collins listened to it all with growing impatience. Finally, he stood up and walked to the tactical display. "Let me show you something," he said, calling up a recording from Earth's history. The display showed ancient human warriors using fire and smoke to drive enemies into killing zones, employing deception and surprise to defeat larger forces. Humans survived on a planet full of predators by becoming better predators. We didn't have claws or fangs or natural armor. We had brains and the willingness to use them without moral constraints when survival was at stake. He turned to face the room. Every species in this coalition has evolved past the need for such thinking. You've had the luxury of moral choices because you've never faced extinction. But the Vex don't care about your evolution. They don't respect your ethics. They want to eat everything that lives, including you. Dr. Veltan found herself thinking about the human's words. The coalition had indeed evolved beyond the brutal necessities of survival warfare. But evolution sometimes meant developing traits that were useful in one environment, but deadly in another. "Give me one operation," Collins said finally. "One chance to show you how effective these tactics can be. If I'm wrong, you can put me back in the freezer and forget I ever existed." Commander Morkai looked around the room at his officers. The war was going badly. Traditional tactics were failing. Maybe it was time to try something different, even if it meant compromising their principles. "What kind of operation?" he asked. Collins smiled again, and this time Dr. Veltan saw something in his expression that made her understand why humans had been such successful predators. "There's a Vex supply convoy moving through the Kepler Nebula next week. 12 ships carrying biological resources from their latest conquest. Your intelligence reports say it's too well defended for a direct assault. It is. We'd lose half our attack fleet trying to take it. Then we don't attack it directly. We kill it." The room fell silent again. There was something in the way Collins said the word "kill" that made it clear he wasn't talking about a standard military engagement. "Explain," Commander Morkai said quietly. Collins began outlining a plan that horrified everyone in the room. It involved deception, ambush tactics, and targeting methods that violated every principle of civilized warfare. When he finished, the silence stretched for long minutes. Finally, Dr. Veltan spoke. This plan would work. But it would also make us into something we've never been before. It would make you into something that survives, Collins replied. The question is whether that's worth more than your moral purity. Commander Morkai made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. We'll try it. But if this goes wrong, Collins, the responsibility is yours. Collins nodded. I understand, Commander. But if it goes right, the responsibility is yours too. Captain Lisa Hayes stood on the bridge of the Coalition stealth ship Silent Runner, watching the swirling purple clouds of the Kepler Nebula fill the view screen. She had volunteered for this mission against the advice of her friends and the direct orders of her superior officers. Now, 3 days into the operation, she was starting to understand why everyone had tried to talk her out of it. Target convoy will enter the nebula in 47 minutes, reported Lieutenant Ben Carter from the sensor station. His voice was tight with nervousness. Like everyone else on the crew, he had never participated in the kind of operation Collins had planned. Collins himself stood behind the captain's chair, studying tactical displays with the calm focus of a predator. He had spent the past week training the crew in what he called asymmetric warfare tactics. Most of the training had involved doing things that felt wrong to every instinct the Coalition officers possessed. Remember, we're not engaging in honorable combat, Collins said to the bridge crew. We're hunting. The prey doesn't get to fight back fairly because fair fights get you killed. Captain Hayes felt her stomach tighten. She had been fighting the Vex for 8 years, always following Coalition protocols and rules of engagement. This mission violated everything she had been taught about proper military conduct. Sir, the convoy is showing standard Vex formation, Carter reported. 12 cargo vessels in the center, surrounded by 8 destroyer-class escorts. They're following the main shipping lane through the nebula, just as intelligence predicted. Collins nodded. Perfect. They're doing exactly what we expected because they think like parasites. They take the easiest path and rely on their escorts to handle any threats. He activated the ship's communication system and spoke to the other vessels in their small task force. 3 Coalition ships, each carrying a crew that had volunteered for what their commanders considered a suicide mission. All units, this is Collins, begin Phase 1. Captain Hayes watched in fascination and horror as Collins's plan unfolded. Instead of announcing their presence and demanding surrender, as Coalition protocol required, they remained hidden in the nebula's sensor shadows. Instead of engaging the escorts in direct combat, they targeted the convoy's most vulnerable points. The first strike came from Lieutenant Susan Park's ship, the Storm Chaser. Using the nebula's interference to mask their approach, they launched a spread of mining charges into the convoy's path. The charges were designed to look like space debris until the moment they detonated. The lead Vex cargo ship disappeared in a ball of fire and twisted metal. The convoy immediately went to alert status, but their sensors couldn't penetrate the nebula's interference well enough to locate the attackers. Phase 2. Collins ordered. Captain Hayes activated the Silent Runner's electronic warfare systems, something that had never been used offensively before. Instead of jamming enemy communications, they began broadcasting false sensor readings, making it appear as though Coalition ships were attacking from multiple directions simultaneously. The Vex escorts broke formation, trying to respond to phantom attacks that existed only in their sensor displays. In their confusion, they left gaps in their protective screen around the cargo vessels. Now we hit them, Collins said quietly. What followed was unlike any battle Captain Hayes had ever seen. Instead of the ordered formations and methodical exchanges of fire that characterized Coalition warfare, this was chaos orchestrated with surgical precision. Collins had positioned each ship to exploit the convoy's confusion, striking it damaged vessels while avoiding direct confrontation with healthy ones. Target the cargo ship with the damaged engines, Collins instructed Carter. Disabled prey is easier to finish off. Carter hesitated. Sir, That vessel is broadcasting a surrender signal. Collins looked at him with cold eyes. The Vex don't accept surrenders, Lieutenant. They consume everything they capture. This is not a time for mercy. Captain Hayes felt sick as she watched her crew follow Collins's orders. The damaged cargo ship exploded under their concentrated fire, taking with it whatever biological resources the Vex had stolen from their latest victims. Sir, 2 escort vessels are breaking off to pursue Lieutenant Park's ship, Carter reported. Let them, Collins replied. Park, execute evasion pattern Delta. Lead them into the asteroid field we mined yesterday. Captain Hayes understood the plan now. They weren't just attacking the convoy. They were using the convoy's own responses against it. Every move the Vex made played into Collins's strategy. 20 minutes later, the 2 pursuing escorts triggered the hidden mines Park had led them into. The explosions lit up the nebula like a deadly fireworks display. Remaining escort vessels are regrouping around the cargo ships, Carter announced. Predictable, Collins said. They're thinking like guards instead of hunters. Execute Phase 3. This was the part of the plan that had horrified the Coalition command staff the most. Instead of engaging the remaining escorts directly, they began targeting the convoy's communication relay. Without coordination, the Vex ships would be forced to operate independently, making them vulnerable to the kind of tactics Collins specialized in. Lieutenant Commander Rick Stone's ship, the Night Hawk, used the nebula's sensor shadows to approach the communication vessel undetected. His crew had spent days practicing the kind of close-range attack that Coalition forces normally considered too dangerous to attempt. The communication ship died in silence, its destruction hidden by the nebula's interference until it was too late for the other vessels to respond. Sir, the remaining cargo ships are trying to scatter, Carter reported. Of course they are. They're prey animals running from predators. Collins activated the fleet communication system again. All units, begin the hunt. Remember, wounded prey first. Don't let any of them escape. What followed was not a battle in any sense that Captain Hayes understood. It was a systematic extermination. Collins coordinated the 3 Coalition ships like a pack of wolves, using their superior speed and the nebula's concealment to pick off the scattered Vex vessels one by one. The Vex tried to fight back, but their tactics were designed for traditional warfare against enemies who followed predictable patterns. Collins's forces appeared from unexpected directions, struck with overwhelming force, and disappeared before the enemy could respond effectively. Last cargo vessel is attempting to flee the nebula, Carter announced. Can't let it report our new tactics to the Vex command, Collins said. Hayes, take us in for the kill. Captain Hayes found herself following orders that went against every principle she had been taught. She watched her crew track down a fleeing enemy like hunters pursuing wounded game. When their weapons finally destroyed the last Vex ship, the silence on the bridge was deafening. Mission complete, Collins announced. 12 cargo vessels destroyed, 8 escorts eliminated. Total enemy casualties, approximately 4,000 Vex drones, plus whatever biological resources they were transporting. Coalition casualties, 0. The numbers should have felt like victory, but Captain Hayes felt only a hollow sickness in her stomach. They had won, but at a cost she was only beginning to understand. Sir, we're receiving communication from Coalition Command, Carter reported. Commander Morque's voice filled the bridge, transmitted across the light years through quantum communication. Task Force, report your status. Mission successful. Commander, Collins replied. Convoy destroyed, no survivors, no witnesses. The Vex won't know what hit them or how we did it. There was a long pause before Morquai responded. Understood. Return to base immediately. All crews are to report for debriefing upon arrival. As the silent runner left the nebula behind, Captain Hayes stared at the tactical display showing the debris field where the Vex convoy had died. 12 ships and their crews, destroyed not in honorable combat, but in what could only be described as an ambush. "You did well, Captain," Collins said quietly, moving to stand beside her. "Did I? This doesn't feel like winning. It feels like murder." Collins was quiet for a moment, looking out at the stars. "The Vex have destroyed 47 coalition worlds in the past 5 years. Every cargo ship we just killed was carrying biological material harvested from sentient beings. The resources they were transporting would have been used to build more ships, breed more drones, and attack more innocent worlds." He turned to look at her directly. "How many lives do you think we saved today by being willing to fight dirty?" Captain Hayes didn't have an answer. The mathematics of war were simple, but the moral calculations were infinitely more complex. "This is what human military doctrine looks like," Collins continued. "We don't fight to prove our honor or demonstrate our superiority. We fight to win, because losing means extinction." Every human who ever lived understood that survival sometimes requires you to become something you don't want to be. Lieutenant Carter spoke up from his station. "Sir, why didn't the Coalition develop these tactics themselves?" "They're obviously effective," Collins smiled grimly, "because they evolved past the need for them. The Coalition built a civilization based on cooperation and mutual respect. These tactics are the opposite of everything they represent." "Then why are we using them?" Captain Hayes asked. "Because sometimes civilization needs to be defended by people willing to step outside of it." Word of the Kepler Nebula victory spread through Coalition Command like wildfire. In 3 hours, Collins had accomplished what traditional tactics had failed to achieve in months of fighting. 12 Vex cargo ships destroyed without a single Coalition casualty. The numbers were impossible to ignore, but they came with questions that made everyone uncomfortable. Dr. Kira Veltan sat in her office, reading the after-action reports from Captain Hayes and her crew. The psychological evaluations were troubling. Every crew member who had participated in the mission showed signs of stress and moral confusion. They had won a perfect victory, but it felt like a defeat. A soft chime announced a visitor. Collins entered without waiting for permission, carrying a data tablet and wearing the same calm expression he had maintained since his revival. 3 weeks of working with him had taught Kira that his calmness was the most dangerous thing about him. "The doctor, I need to discuss my next operation with you." Kira gestured to a chair, but Collins remained standing. He activated his tablet and projected a holographic display showing the Darkhold system. "Intelligence reports indicate a major Vex breeding facility on the 4th planet," Collins explained. "It's been operational for 6 months using captured populations from the Tertian colonies. Our estimates suggest they've processed over 2 million sentient beings into biological resources." Kira felt her stomach turn. The Vex breeding facilities were nightmares that haunted Coalition intelligence reports. Entire populations disappeared into them, converted into the living components that made up Vex ships and equipment. "The Coalition Council has declared Darkhold off limits," she said carefully. "The facility is too heavily defended, and there are still civilian populations being held there." Collins nodded. "Approximately 40,000 survivors from various species. The Council refuses to authorize an attack because civilian casualties would be inevitable. Those people are innocents, Collins. We can't sacrifice them. They're already dead." Collins's voice was flat and emotionless. "The Vex don't keep prisoners for long. Every day we wait, more civilians get processed into ship components. Every week we delay, the facility produces more drones to attack other worlds." He manipulated the holographic display, showing projected casualty figures. "If we destroy the facility now, we lose 40,000 people who are probably going to die. Anyway, if we wait 6 months, that facility will produce enough resources for the Vex to attack and capture 10 more worlds with a combined population of over 50 million. The mathematics were horrible, but Kira couldn't argue with them. Collins had a talent for reducing complex moral questions to simple numbers. What are you proposing? Collins outlined a plan that made the Kepler Nebula operation look gentle by comparison. Instead of a direct assault, he wanted to infiltrate the facility using captured Vex equipment. Instead of trying to rescue the civilian population, he would use their presence as cover for the real mission. We go in pretending to be a Vex supply convoy. Once we're inside their defenses, we plant fusion charges at key structural points and detonate the entire facility. The explosion will be powerful enough to sterilize the planet's surface. Kira stared at him in horror. You're talking about genocide. Not just the Vex, but every living thing on that planet. I'm talking about preventing the Vex from using that facility to commit genocide on dozens of other worlds. Collins deactivated the display and looked directly at her. Doctor, I need you to understand something. This isn't about what's right or wrong. This is about what works. There has to be another way. Show me one. Collins reactivated the display and brought up coalition battle plans for the Darkhold system. Your strategists have been working on this problem for 8 months. Every plan they've developed results in massive coalition casualties and minimal chance of success. The Vex built this facility specifically to be unassailable using conventional tactics. Kira studied the failed battle plans. Each one involved direct assault on heavily fortified positions with projected casualty rates that made them unacceptable to coalition leadership. Why are you showing this to me? Commander Morkai makes the tactical decisions. Because you're the only person here who seems to understand what I'm becoming. Collins sat down across from her, and for the first time since his revival, he looked tired. Every operation I plan makes me more like the enemy I'm fighting. Every victory requires me to sacrifice another piece of what made me human. Kira felt a chill of understanding. You want me to stop you. I want you to help me stay focused on why I'm doing this. The Vex aren't going to be defeated by people who fight fair. They're going to be defeated by someone willing to become enough of a monster to beat them at their own game. Before Kira could respond, her office door chimed again. Commander Morkai entered, flanked by 2 security officers. His expression was grim. Collins, the Coalition Council has reviewed your Darkhold proposal. It's been rejected. Collins stood slowly. On what grounds? Excessive civilian casualties. Violation of interstellar law. Use of weapons of mass destruction. Take your pick. Commander, that facility will produce enough biological resources to... I know what it will produce. Morkai's voice was sharp with anger. I also know that approving your plan would make us no better than the enemy we're fighting. Collins was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a dangerous edge that made everyone in the room uncomfortable. Commander, may I ask you a personal question? Proceed. How many worlds have you lost while maintaining your moral superiority? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Commander Morkai's silver skin darkened with anger, but he answered honestly. 17 worlds in the past 2 years. Over 800 million casualties. And how many of those people would still be alive if you had been willing to fight dirty? That's not the point, Collins. That's exactly the point. Collins moved closer to the commander, and Kira saw something in his eyes that reminded her why humans had been such successful predators. You're so concerned with staying civilized that you're letting civilization die. What would you have us become? Monsters like the Vex? I'd have you become survivors. Collins activated his tablet again, showing images from recent Vex attacks. These are the latest intelligence reports from the Cordon system. 3 billion people dead in the past month because the Vex knew exactly how you would respond to their attacks. The images were horrific. Entire cities converted into biological processing centers. Populations herded like livestock into conversion facilities. Children separated from parents and processed into the living components that powered Vex technology. This is what your honor has accomplished, Commander. This is the price of fighting fair against an enemy that doesn't understand fairness. Commander Morkai stared at the images for a long time. Finally, he spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. What you're asking us to do, it changes everything. If we start using your methods, where does it end? How do we know when we've become the very thing we're fighting against? Colin shut off the display and faced the commander directly. You know you've gone too far when you start enjoying it. As long as it still makes you sick, you're probably still human enough to matter. The room fell silent. Kira understood now why Collins had wanted to talk to her first. He was asking them to follow him into darkness, but he needed someone to make sure he could find his way back. The Darkhold mission is still unauthorized, Commander Morkai said finally. Understood, sir. However, if a small group of volunteers were to undertake an unauthorized reconnaissance mission that happened to result in the facility's destruction, I would be forced to discipline them severely. Collins smiled for the first time since his revival, and it was not a pleasant expression. What kind of discipline are we talking about, Commander? Extended shore leave. Maybe a commendation for initiative. Terrible punishments, really. I think I can live with that kind of discipline, sir. Commander Morkai nodded slowly. Dr. Veltan, you'll accompany this unauthorized mission as an observer. Someone needs to document what happens when we let a human soldier off his leash. Kira felt her heart skip a beat. Commander, I'm not a combat officer. No, but you understand Collins better than anyone else here. If he goes too far, you might be the only person who can stop him. Collins looked at her with those predator's eyes. Are you willing to follow me into hell, Doctor? Kira thought about the images from Cordon, about the facility on Darkhold, about the choice between maintaining moral purity and saving lives. Finally, she nodded. Someone has to make sure you come back human. Collins's smile widened. Doctor, I stopped being human the day you woke me up. Now I'm just trying to remember why that used to matter. 6 months after his revival, Jake Collins stood on the bridge of a captured Vex transport ship, watching the Darkhold system grow larger on the view screen. The ship still smelled like the biological components that powered it, a mixture of decay and alien chemistry that made most Coalition officers sick. Collins had grown used to it. Dr. Kira Veltan sat at the makeshift communication station, monitoring Coalition frequencies for any sign that their deception had been discovered. Captain Lisa Hayes piloted the stolen vessel with the help of 2 volunteers from her original crew. Everyone else had refused to participate in what they called a suicide mission. Darkhold Control is requesting our cargo manifest, Hayes reported, her voice tight with stress. Collins activated the false identity transmitter they had built from salvaged Vex equipment. To enemy sensors, they appeared to be a routine supply. Convoy carrying fresh biological resources from a recent conquest. Transmit the prepared data, he ordered. Remember, we're delivering processed biomass from the Tertian colonies. Standard cargo run. The next few minutes stretched like hours as they waited for Darkhold Control to respond. If the Vex discovered their deception now, they would be destroyed before they could complete their mission. Permission granted to dock at Processing Bay. 7, came the reply in the clicking, buzzing language of the Vex. The ship's translator converted it to standard Coalition speech, but the words still carried an alien coldness that made everyone uncomfortable. As they approached the facility, Collins studied the intelligence reports one final time. The breeding complex was massive, covering most of the planet's northern continent. Millions of Vex drones worked constantly to convert captured populations into the biological components that powered their empire. The facility produced enough resources each month to build dozens of new ships. Jesus, whispered Lieutenant Ben Carter, staring at the facility through the view screen. It's bigger than our intelligence estimates. Collins looked at the sprawling complex of organic towers and processing centers. It's also more vulnerable. Bigger targets are easier to destroy if you know where to hit them. Dr. Veltan checked her scanner readings. I'm detecting massive biological activity throughout the complex. There are still tens of thousands of civilians being held in the processing centers. I know, Collins said quietly. Jake, there has to be another way. Some of these people could still be saved. Collins turned to face her, and she saw in his eyes the weight of every decision he had made since his revival. Doctor, I've run the calculations 100 times. Any attempt to rescue those civilians would alert the facility's defenses and result in mission failure. If we fail here, this facility will continue operating for years. But those people are already dead. Collins's voice was flat and final. The Vex don't keep prisoners for rescue missions. They keep them for processing. Every minute we delay, more of them die anyway. The docking procedure completed without incident. Coalition intelligence had been correct about Vex security protocols. The creatures were so confident in their facilities, defenses that they barely inspected routine supply deliveries. Collins led his team through the ship's cargo bay, where they had hidden the fusion charges among fake biological cargo. Each charge was small enough to carry easily, but powerful enough to destroy a city block. Placed correctly, they would trigger a chain reaction that would obliterate the entire facility. Remember the plan, Collins said as they prepared to leave the ship. We split into 3 teams. Hayes and Carter take the primary processing center. Veltan and I hit the central command structure. The automated charges will handle the power generation facilities. How long do we have once the charges are armed? Hayes asked. 30 minutes. The explosion will be visible from orbit, so make sure you're on the ship when it happens. They moved through the facility's corridors like ghosts, using their captured Vex equipment to blend in with the constant flow of drones and workers. The complex was a nightmare of organic architecture and industrial efficiency. Living walls, pulsed with alien blood vessels. Machinery that was part technology and part creature processed, captured beings into the components needed for Vex expansion. Collins and Dr. Veltan reached the central command center without incident. The fusion charge was small enough to hide among the organic computing systems that controlled the facility's operations. Once armed, it would detonate in exactly 30 minutes. Charge is armed, Collins reported through his communicator. All teams report status. Hayes here. Primary processing center is rigged. We saw the holding areas, Collins. There are children in there. Human children. Collins felt something twist in his chest. Understood. Stick to the mission. Collins, we could save some of them. Just the kids, please. Dr. Veltan watched Collins's face as he struggled with the decision. She could see the human part of him warring with the soldier he had become. Negative, he said finally. Any deviation from the plan compromises the mission. Those children are already lost. The return journey to their ship took 15 minutes. As they moved through the facility's corridors, Collins found himself looking at the processing centers where thousands of sentient beings waited for conversion into Vex biological components. He could hear sounds through the walls, crying, screaming, voices calling for help in dozens of different languages. Jake, Dr. Veltan said quietly as they walked. You don't have to become a monster to win this war. Yes, I do. Collins didn't. Look at her as he spoke. The only way to beat monsters is to become something worse than they are. The Coalition tried fighting them with honor and decency. How did that work out? They reached their ship with 10 minutes to spare. Captain Hayes and Lieutenant Carter were already aboard, both looking sick from what they had seen in the processing centers. All charges armed and ready, Hayes reported. But Collins, what we saw in there, those people are still alive. We could have saved at least some of them. Collins took his position at the control station and began the departure sequence. Captain, if we had tried to rescue anyone, the Vex would have detected our presence. The facility would have gone to full alert. Our mission would have failed, and millions more people would die in the facilities this place would have built. But we're about to murder 40,000 innocents. No, Collins's voice was hard as steel. We're about to prevent the murder of 40 million innocents. Sometimes there's a difference. The ship lifted off from the facility just as the first fusion charge detonated. The explosion lit up the planet's surface like a miniature sun. Secondary explosions followed as the chain reaction spread through the facility's power systems and biological processors. From orbit, they watched the entire complex disappear in a ball of nuclear fire. The explosion was so massive that it cracked the planet's crust and sent debris into space. Nothing could have survived. Facility destroyed, Carter reported, his voice empty of emotion. No life signs detected on the surface. Collins stood at the view screen, watching the burning remains of what had been one of the Vex Empire's most important assets. He had accomplished something the Coalition's best strategists said was impossible. He had also just killed more innocents than any single person in Coalition history. Was it worth it? Dr. Veltan asked quietly. Collins was silent for a long time before answering. Ask me that question in 5 years when the ships this facility would have built aren't attacking defenseless colonies. Ask me when the children those ships would have processed into biological components are still alive. And what about the children who died today? Collins turned away from the view screen. For the first time since his revival, Dr. Veltan saw cracks in the armor he had built around his emotions. They'll haunt me for the rest of my life, he said quietly. But they're not the only ghosts I'm carrying. Every time the Coalition retreated from a battle to avoid civilian casualties, more people died. Every time they chose honor over victory, entire worlds paid the price. The return journey to Coalition space took 3 days. During that time, Collins spent most of his time alone in his quarters, planning the next phase of the war. His tactics had proven devastatingly effective, but Dr. Veltan could see the psychological cost mounting. On the final day of their journey, she found him staring out at the stars through his cabin's small viewpoint. The war is changing because of what you've done, she said. Coalition Command is adopting your methods across all fronts. We're winning. I know. But you're not happy about it. Collins was quiet for a moment. Doctor, when I was a child on Earth, my father told me something I've never forgotten. He said that the most dangerous person in any war is someone who's willing to do whatever it takes to win, because that person stops being human and becomes a weapon. He turned to face her. I stopped being human the day you thawed me out. Everything I've done since then has been about making sure humanity's enemies understand that we're the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. And after the war is over, what happens to the weapon then? Collins smiled sadly. Weapons don't get happy endings, Doctor. They get put away until the next time they're needed. Dr. Veltan felt tears forming in her eyes. Jake, there has to be something left of the person you were.